left, right.
Today we're talking about inviting a date over for the first time. We're not talking about a first date, and this is again from a dude's perspective, but we're talking about a dude inviting over a date, ideally cooking for her and presenting his best self under heavy judgment. So listen on, get our two dudes' perspective. Let me know what you think. Let me know what we missed, and if we missed the topic entirely, glad to hear that in the comments. But as always, I thank you guys for watching, subscribing, liking, any interaction with the video. I always appreciate. So I'll see you guys on the other end, and thanks for coming. This is SipTalk. Grab a drink and enjoy.
Where's this going?
Cheers.
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 All right, we are live. We're back in the spotlight. This is Sip Talk. I am Justin DiGiulio in my basement in New Jersey, joined by James, the Bosnian Boswell out of Charleston, South Carolina. James is a philosopher, a professional referee, bartender, and most exciting of all, an accountant. James, nice to have you. I hear the beer snap open.
Yep, you know what it is.
A bush ice.
Yep.
I got my usual triple pour here of a bourbon tonight. It's nice and ice cold too. It was in the refrigerator, so I'm going to let that sit for a minute. We have somewhat of an exciting episode. I think it might elicit some disagreement coming from us, but
Okay.
I think it's a good idea for us to talk about some first date and hosting a date. Ideally, not the first date, but hosting a date in your own place from the male perspective. I got a few other things kind of happening in the ether. I thought I'd kind of rant on a little bit. You were telling me that the flight turned around on the way to London or something today or this week. Because
Yeah, I don't know exactly when it was in the last day or two, but flight from Miami to London makes it a couple hundred miles off the coast, turns around because somebody on the plane refused to wear their mask. And all I can think about is if I was on that flight, how badly I would have wanted to murder that person.
But the plane must have turned around to punish that person.
Correct.
But it actually punished everyone else. This must have been like a total mental breakdown, though, that somebody wouldn't see for the greater good. You just fucking strap a mask across your face, get where you want to go.
Yeah, it's just nobody really likes doing it, but everybody else is. What makes you special?
I mean, these mask rules are, whatever. I'm not.
But
I wear it just, for the most part when I'm in a public area. Not out. I don't wear it ever outside, unless also it's fucking freezing cold. Which has been a couple of days. I've worn it just for the sake of having the warmth on my face. But people, come on. Is this something we really got to argue? If you're in somebody else's space and they tell you to take your shoes off, you take your fucking shoes off. You're on somebody else's airplane, they tell you to wear the mask. It's not your fucking airplane, bro. Fucking put the mask on. That's I don't like wearing it. Wherever I go, I typically don't wear it. And if nobody asks me to put it on, I'm just a happy dude. And if I walk into like a store and they say, hey, because in New York and New Jersey, there's kind of different rules. So in New Jersey, it's not a mandate. So if I walk into a place in Jersey, they say nothing, I'm fine. Typically, I see a handful of other people not wearing masks. And if they say something, I take it out of my pocket and put it on my face. It's their rules. And one of the things I noticed also about going into different places is it's really difficult to read every sign on the door now because a lot of places will have their doors will just be plastered with signs. So I just kind of wait for somebody to ask me to put it on. New York City, on the other hand, I usually just wear it into places just because. Anything else on this flight? What airline was it?
don't know.
Do we know if
Um, I'm just thinking about how, well, for one, the airlines can probably go after that person for the cost of like the emergency landing and everything else. So this could cost that person like $20,000 to like $100,000, which I hope they have to pay because like they've inconvenienced 300 other people because they're super selfish.
It was probably like one of those temper tantrum Karen type moments, which
And
is
I have to just feel for the flight attendants and everything else because they've been putting up with this garbage for the last 2 years. And like, why are you fighting with these people? They're not going to have patience for your bullshit. They just aren't.
okay. All right. So my question, I don't know if I asked this out loud or I just thought it a second ago, but I was wondering if it was first class passenger or somebody else, because I feel like it would more likely come from first class. And I'm reading about it now. First class passenger who allegedly refused to wear a mask disrupted the London bound American Airlines flight Wednesday night, so last night, and prompted the pilot to turn back to Miami so the customer could be booted. Which I guess if the plane just kind of landed, kicked the guy off the plane, and then they turned back around, got on the runway, and left, maybe a 2 or 3 hour total delay, ideally, if they played their cards right. And then, people who are flying should kind of be expected to have some delays. So maybe
Yeah, but it's one thing, like, if you've got crappy weather or like a mechanical thing and you're just like, well, this isn't anybody's fault, it just happens. Versus somebody who's on the plane takes off, and then they act like an asshole and cause everybody to have to go back around. And even let's say they made it an hour into the flight and they have to turn back. It's not just as simple as a 2 hour delay, because now you've got to refuel the flight. You've probably got to go through the pre-flight checks again because you've landed. And there's probably FAA paperwork that needs to be filled out in terms of the change of the flight plan. And
it's a clusterfuck, though. Yeah, I mean, it's one.
And that person's bags need to come off the airplane. And I'm not sure about this, but I think if one bag is removed from the airplane, all the bags have to be removed from the airplane.
That would be a silly rule, but that's just fucking terrible. But that's
even just getting one bag off the airplane, you have to pop open the cargo hold. You have to go find that bag, get it off, and that's 10 or 15 minutes right there. If you don't have to take any other bags off.
Yeah, but it's just this sense of entitlement, and that's man. But that's interesting news. I've been telling you, I've been listening to news headlines to figure out like what's news, like what is something that I want to hear about when I turn on the news, and that's one that's kind of on the line. I'm like, oh, this is something that's funny and it's interesting, and I
think it's good to draw attention to this and say, like, look, if you act like an asshole on an airplane, then the flight's going to get turned around, and you might be arrested when you get off the plane. And Rosh is asking, what if the captain got in trouble for making the decision? And for one, the captain's not going to get in trouble because this is an FAA regulation where, like, so I was in the airports a lot in the last 2 weeks, and like wearing a mask is federal law right now. So not wearing a mask on an airplane is, under the federal law, pretty similar to pulling out a cigarette and lighting up in the cabin.
Yeah.
Like, that's how they treat it. So the captain's not going to get any trouble. He's got the law behind him.
You hear about the issues with 5G affecting some of the instruments on the planes now?
Yeah, this is completely the airline's fault.
Why is that?
So when the airlines put in a bid to have you've got the electromagnetic spectrum, and there's only so many wavelengths within it, right?
Yeah.
So to have rights to use a certain part of the spectrum, you have to pay. It's probably the FCC that regulates.
That would be it.
And so you have to pay some amount of money to the FCC to have XYZ to ZYX bandwidth. So the airlines put in a bid for some amount of bandwidth. And there's also kind of buffer zones between the different bandwidths. So let's say, I think the one that the airlines use is 4,000 to 4,200. So between 3,800 and 4,000, nobody's allowed to use. So that way there's no chance of an overlap.
Okay.
And so the nearest one, and like the 5G signal might be like 3,600 to 3,800. I'm probably getting the numbers wrong, but
Okay, but I'm following you. Yeah.
so the instruments that the airlines use, the ones that need to be updated, the ones that are problematic, are all old. And so the airlines have known this has been coming for quite some time and have chosen not to update their instruments to the more modern ones that use a narrower bandwidth. So really, the airlines had plenty of time to prepare for this, knew it was coming, and dragged their heels on it and making it a big enough problem that they're hoping that they're going to be able to get somebody else to pay for this.
Well,
It's
they're trying to ban 5G supporting towers within a certain radius around airports.
Yeah, so they're trying to basically make it so that the the auction that they won is worth more than the auction that the 5G companies won, because they're trying to restrict the ability of 5G companies to be able to use their bandwidth wherever they want. They're trying to make somebody else pay for the fact that they don't want to pay to update the instruments on their airplanes.
Yeah, that's
It's like if you had a car that had really bad shocks and suspension, and every once in a while going around a turn, you just lose traction, and if you're driving in a city, you might end up hitting a car. Like, you've got two choices. You can either take the car in and get it fixed, or you can tell everybody else on the street to just put pillows on their side doors. And that's what the
yeah.
airline companies are trying to do. Is like,
Expecting everybody else. No, it's their own issue. It's old. It's old equipment. It's got a. I'm guessing it can detect whatever the lower frequency is, and that interrupts what it's supposed to be detecting.
yeah, because when the old equipment that was like 10 or 15 years old that was installed, like it didn't need to be in such a tight bandwidth because nobody else was using those other frequencies. Well, now they are.
Yeah. So actually, to me,
But if the airlines really wanted to keep the crappy equipment, then they should have bought the lower frequencies too. But they
so
didn't.
to me, that sounds like interesting news. Now that sounds like headline news to me, but it's not. It's not. That's an important one that we need to understand. These things, and but it's a slightly more complex topic that's difficult for the masses to understand. I'll give you my last.
I'm linking an explanation from someone who's a pilot about this one.
Well, we can talk. You're linking it.
Yeah.
We're going to miss it in this article, but in this cast, but we got to move on. I'm going to share with you the last headline news thing. Then we can get into some dating stuff here. Well, the topic of the podcast: hosting a date at home. But the headline I heard when I arrived home, when I get home, the radio goes on automatically to the news, so I kind of keep up to date with what's going on. But it said, this is headline news. It said, how much does a cop in New Jersey make? Well, accounting for side jobs and overtimes, the answer might surprise you.
Well, side jobs and overtimes aren't what they make.
Well, that's so. And this is just a level of critical thinking that's not very deep here. And I'm thinking like, well, if you're going to give me the number that includes the side jobs and the overtime, if you told me how much does somebody at McDonald's make, accounting for side jobs and massive amount of overtime, you'd be surprised. I think I probably would be surprised if like.
I mean, you might as well be able to say like, Debbie volunteers at her church 6 hours a week. How much does she make if you account for side jobs and overtime? Well, she makes $100,000 a year. Everyone should volunteer at that church. You're making $100,000 a year.
You'd really be surprised how much Debbie's making. I listen to these headlines, and now I try to deconstruct every headline that I hear, and just think, is this newsworthy? And is this something just to get people to like stay tuned in? I kind of wanted to hear the figure, but I just said, fuck that, play some music. Because whatever. My point was, I got my point. Now I can share it with you and all of you. So look, I want to talk about dating. I had my friend Chef Bruno over last weekend, and anybody who's watching us live now online may have seen Bruno cooking in my kitchen Bruno's creating this app. It's called my.itopresrecipes.com, and it's basically like a restaurant website builder and also something that can be used for sharing personal recipes. So what he wanted to do was get some cooking videos so he could use that media to promote his project. So we made a bunch of food, and it had me thinking. Today I cooked some mussels. I know you're not a seafood guy. Mussels are incredibly easy to cook. It actually took like probably 5 minutes, and I am stuffed. I ate right before we came on air, and I was thinking how easy mussels are to make and how impressive it is as as a dish to serve someone, because it seems very complex. And I just started thinking, like, when you have somebody over on a date, um, the first home date, when if you're a dude and you invite a lady over to your house and say you're gonna cook some dinner, we're gonna say this is like one step above the Netflix and order Grubhub and chill, right? Because the first home date is kind of you displaying your competence at being a civilized person. You're inviting somebody into your own space, and you should be expecting a decent amount of judgment.
Yeah, that's why they're coming over.
But I think if you're not expecting a certain amount of judgment, then you're not comprehending the significance of that first home date with someone. So you should be prepared to showcase your competence at holding your own as an independent adult.
Yeah, I think
And
this is very different than bringing someone back home from a bar with you.
well, that's so some of my, I spent some time thinking on the topic, like, what is the significance of bringing someone home to your place, your house, or your apartment for the first time? Now, if it's like a hookup thing, okay. But before I got to even the hookup mindset, I was thinking, like, if you're going to invite someone over, especially if it's a female going to the guy's house, that's a bit scary, right? Like, there's some danger involved.
There's
So
more danger involved for women in pretty much every step of the dating process.
very true. I would agree at many levels, but then I was thinking, like, oh, there's a certain danger aspect of it, but then there's also like the quick hookup one night stand thing, and that's and you don't really factor that in.
Yeah, you also don't factor those as dates.
Those usually don't factor as dates as well. So the one night stand, what might at the time be perceived as a one night stand, you're not going in with that serious long term commitment type mindset. The first home date is when you decide you want to let somebody a little closer to you, right? So you've maybe been on, I would say, minimum 2 dates at a public place. I think inviting somebody over to your place on a first date, especially if it's like internet dating, and then you're like, "Hey, come on over." I think that's a really risky move. I have a friend that does that quite a bit, and I think it's more hookup culture, but I don't think it's breeding serious relationships from that. Would you agree?
Um,
I'm saying the first date at home, you've never met this person before, you're inviting them to your place.
that would not be my preferred strategy, but I can think of at least 2 times that I have done it, but at their place.
Ooh, even more dangerous. Well, actually, no,
Well,
not
no,
not
less
more
dangerous.
dangerous. No, less dangerous. But
Less dangerous for me than it would be for them. Um, like one was about a year ago. The other was like 8 or 9 years ago. But I think the one 8 or 9 years ago, I'm still trying to figure out what that was.
well, it's I. If a girl invites you over on a first date, and you've never met before, it's like first date. That's much more of a hookup, I would imagine. That because they're already putting. And I'm sure women will disagree with me, but I can tell you as a guy, if we've never met in person before and you invite me to come over, I would assume you're on the easier side, and I'm sure this will piss people off. But that's just, I'm sharing with you my perspective and my opinion. So it's just kind of what comes along with inviting somebody over you never met. Like you're quick to make decisions like that, and it is a more dangerous move for the female there. But I would say if you're a guy and you want to invite a girl over to your place, I would say minimum of 2 in-person dates.
I think that's a good number.
Yeah.
One, to just establish whether or not you two get along. 2, to make sure that the first one wasn't a fluke.
Yeah, I think that's good. And I imagine the audience I'm trying to direct this at is basically my early 20s self, right? I'm just trying to think of some things that I wish I had a different perspective on in early 20s. And that's kind of how to prepare for a first date. Bruno is an incredible chef. He makes everything look easy. But if you're having somebody over and you want to showcase that you are a full functioning adult, so you're early 20s, but you don't want to appear as somebody who's too much reliant on your parents. You want to show somebody that you have a livable space, a clean home, an organized home. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to have high end furniture and interior design, but it needs to be a decent looking place. It needs to be clean. It can't smell bad. And then because you're showcasing yourself basically, and you're inviting judgment, cooking helps there. So being able to cook a good meal is important.
Chef Boyardee.
Now, have you cooked for first dates before?
One, I think. I guess one. As a first date, yeah. That was the one where I was invited over to her place. I'm not really sure if it was supposed to be a date or not. It kind of turned into one, but.
So it means you didn't get laid. It turned into a date. I went over to her place and then it turned into a date. So, she invited you over for a hookup and you didn't make the move. So then it just turned into this kind of stalemate situation.
Well, I really don't know how to classify anything that happened between me and her, even 9 years later. But yeah, it was we cooked at her place.
Well, when I say first date, actually, I'm moving forward. I mean the first home date.
Oh yeah. Well, I think cooking a meal together as like the first time that you're going over to their place or they're coming over to yours is a really solid idea because it gives you both something to do.
So that's some of my thinking here. So notes right up the bat, and I mentioned this before, is clean. Not while they're there, because that would be awesome. That would give you something to do too. Hey, I didn't clean before you came, but
here's a broom.
I figure we could do some cleaning together as a bonding experience.
Once we're done with that, can you do my taxes?
So no, you want to clean before somebody shows up. You want to have it appear organized, not just clean, but also organized. And clutter is not good. And then also bathrooms. I think a lot of guys don't know how to clean a bathroom, and that's a real telltale. So when you're trying to showcasing your adulthood and you're trying to show a lady that you're an adult, having a clean toilet I think is important. Having kind of clean countertops in the bathroom, also very important.
I will say that when it comes to clean countertops, women are much bigger offenders than men.
Yes, but I can tell you something, that when a woman cleans, so if you live with a woman or you go to a woman's apartment or house unsuspectingly, the bathroom, especially countertops, are just going to be covered in products. But if that woman cleans, you won't know that she owns any of those.
Yeah, but I don't know. I've seen plenty of women's bathrooms, and the majority of them have more products than I could ever imagine buying in my lifetime, just out on deployment. Yeah.
So, but for men,
keeping your toilet clean, not hard to do.
Kind of gross.
And it says a lot about you.
Yeah, no, but that's my point. Having a clean bathroom, and then smell. Also, you have to be cognizant of the odor in your place. So lighting some candles at the very least. If the place is generally pretty spotless, you don't have to worry about that
Well, really, the
as
best
much.
strategy is to not shower about 3 days beforehand, so that way you overpower whatever's going on in your house.
You build up that natural. What's the word I'm looking for?
Rosh asked, "Does cigar
Rank.
smoke count as a smell?" The answer is yes.
Yeah, you don't want cigar smell. I actually really dig cigar smell, but it's not a good home smell, unfortunately.
I would say the best smell that a house can have is nothing.
True, true. Yeah, not having much on it. But then it's also so the kind of next step here is setting the mood, right? You want to have, again, if you're aiming for something a bit more romantic, a bit more personal, not having every light on, having maybe some lamps on, but not too bright, and then some candles are nice. I'm a big fan of candles. I like burning candles. I always actually keep some candles in pretty much every room, and this one might be too dead, but yeah, this one's dead.
We've got
Uh,
something. Vengeance NS has a question, and we need to know what that question is.
all right, Vengeance. What's your question about first dates? Damn, I can't win with this candle. What the hell? Um, so
Is Justin taken?
yes, I'm sorry, Vengeance. Uh, sorry about that. So candles are important,
I'm not a big fan of candles.
but candles really set the mood, my friend. Candles are nice, and they make the place smell nice, which is another major benefit. Damn it! Now I really want to get this candle lit. I'm bummed.
Um, I don't know. I just maybe because like it's not my identity. Where like I don't have candles lit in my place at any time unless the power is out. So like if I'm gonna be dating this chick and like the first time she comes over, I've got candles lit, and then like she comes over on subsequent times, like now I either have to like not light either light the candles every single time, which is not me, or explain to her why the candles are lit only once.
I don't think you do. I think you can get in the habit of inviting somebody over and lighting a candle. Um, even if you just do it once, that's a good sign. You don't need to explain why you don't always light candles.
No, then should you buy rose petals before your first date over too? Then
That would be nice, but I think any woman would agree with me. Fuck, man, why would this candle light? I think most women will agree with me that there's a big difference between laying the rose petals across. I just blew this thing out talking. Laying rose petals across the bed and whatever else. It's very suggestive, also, and just having a candle lit. I think the candle's nice, little ambiance, helps in the smell department, and then little music also nice. Um, you have I don't know if I should be asking you have music suggestions for a date there?
my recommendation is instrumental music.
No, I was going to say something that's easier listening.
Right, so you're following along with what I'm saying. Then it's like
Yeah, yeah,
instrumental music, so that way like it's in the background, and if it's something that you're familiar with, you can talk about, but is easily ignorable.
yeah. You guys are getting the secret strategies here that James and I have employed for a couple of decades.
Yeah, this is the steps beyond vodka and duct tape.
Um, so look, the music thing. Uh, Ed Sheeran. You know Ed Sheeran, kind of a goofy English guy, singer
I've
songwriter.
never listened to him, but
Oh my God! So I listen to the Amazon Music all the time, and it just kind of plays like top hits. Well, Ed Sheeran was my understanding, his first album was like a lot about like loss and breakup and being sad, and it was his first album, so he probably wrote it over the course of high school, middle school, high school, and maybe late teenage years and early 20s. But it was kind of sad and sappy, and people liked it. It made people kind of get in their feels, right? Now he's got this new music, and it's really poppy and almost like beachy sounding, and it just makes me cringe listening to it, picturing Ed Sheeran, which is just whenever I picture Ed Sheeran, I just kind of picture this like slouched over, like sad, sappy guy who's really got a great perspective on being sad, and he's singing this poppy, glitzy music, and I'm just like, I'm like, it's not. This isn't your music, man. What are you doing? It'd be like listening to Adele sing some poppy music on the beach doing the Macarena with some orange lipstick on. Like, that's not Adele. Adele's a sad lady. And now she's extra sad. She's very hungry. You saw Adele lost a lot of weight.
I don't care anything about what she does.
But you know who Adele is. You know her music.
I know who she is,
you know
but
her,
if
you
she
know
were
her
to
music's pretty
stop
sad.
existing, it wouldn't affect my life in any way. It's not saying I want her to be killed. I just would say that she doesn't matter to me.
Oh man. Well, it's just I'm sorry. I'm a bit pissed on the Ed Sheeran because I would have said original Ed Sheeran music would have been some decent like.
No, you want music that is a distraction. Like, I think, like low tempo electronic music's not bad. Like electronic music in general,
Welcome to my lounge.
or like anything. I think anything instrumental is good.
But yeah, easier music, and it shouldn't be too loud.
Oh, here's an old tip.
Yeah.
Is keep your place cold.
Why? So nobody gets too warm when you turn the oven on?
No. If you're going to be watching a movie or something after eating, then like she's going to be cold and want to get closer to you because you're warm.
A temperature trick is a good one. You're really dishing out all the secrets. No, I actually like keeping a cooler home because it encourages you to like throw a blanket on, throw a sweater on, some slippers. You can't do that shit. You don't want to cuddle if the inside of your house is 78 degrees in the wintertime. Like that's not nice. So you keep the temperature, a cool. What temperature do you set your house to when it's cold outside?
Heat is set to 69.
Same thing here. But sometimes I'll turn it down to 67 when I really want to like walk around and be in the house with a sweater on or something, some slippers, because I get too warm otherwise with those things on. But yeah, nice cool 69, 67, 68, 69, the temperature department in the wintertime. That will help you ensure some nice snuggling later. And then let's see, candles, ambiance, lighting. So this is what I was thinking of with Bruno, because this guy's got these recipes that are mastered. He knows them so well that you're cooking something. It can't be your first time cooking, because
Well, it depends on how good of a cook you are.
Well, yeah,
if you're a good cook, then you probably have the skill to just like break out something that you've never tried before and know how to prepare it because you have the skills.
Sure, but we're not talking to presumable people graduating chef school or coming out of the Culinary Institute. I assume we're talking. I'm thinking I'm talking to my 22-year-old self. So I imagine somebody else in those shoes needs to have practiced a recipe a couple of times.
Yeah, Rosh says make polenta on the first date. Don't do that. Although he's in the right genre. If you're on a first date, make Italian.
And why do you say that?
Italian is the grand unifier of all foods. It might not be anybody's favorite food. Some people it is, but even if it's not your favorite food, I've yet to meet a single person that says, "I hate Italian. I just can't eat it." So it's if you pick Italian food to make for a first date, you cannot fail. If you try and do something weird or esoteric, like maybe you win big, but it also could be like, don't make mussels on your first date. If I go over to some chick's place and she's like, "Yeah, we're gonna be making mussels tonight," I'm like, "All right, cool. I'm gonna go home."
Well, so the other one I had was know your audience, right? Like you're not going to cook fish for somebody who doesn't like fish. You're not going to cook steak for somebody who's not a big red meat person. And then also just dumping a pack of spaghetti into a pot of boiling water is really kind of lame. It's one thing
right,
if you're making
that's
if you're
one
doing,
part of it. Like
yes,
if
it
you're
is.
making the sauce, if you're doing if you're cooking some meat to go along with it, there's lots of other things that go into Italian than just buying a can of ragu and dumping like some spaghetti noodles into a pot.
Well, yeah,
And even if you do that, you can buy some bread and make some garlic bread. Like you can, there's some way to show some panache or flair, even if you can't cook to save your life.
yeah, I always liked a nice loaf of bread with like some olive oil or dipping sauce or something. Toast the bread up a little bit, but the
Rosh says bruschetta, which is a good idea.
yeah, that's easy. That's easy.
It's really tasty.
Yeah, but again, the practicing part is the important part. I told you I made those mussels tonight. You said you're not a fan of mussels. Fine. Again, know your audience. But I found them today to be super easy. It took me literally 5 minutes, which I've made them a handful of times before. So
Mussels would take me less than 5 minutes. Removed from package, placed directly in trash.
um, but whether it's chicken or it's some type of meat or whatever, just it's got to have a bit of style to it. Again, you pop open the can of ragu and you throw the angel hair pasta into some boiling water. That doesn't count. That it's very very.
Although
simple.
you know what, at 22, that might be good enough.
No, I don't. I that's why I'm directing this to somebody who is 22 years old. At 22, that is good enough, and you're showing that you know the bare basics. That you have no idea.
You're not
what you're
setting
doing
the
in
world on
kitchen.
fire with your skills.
Yeah,
but you're at least trying.
But you're not trying. Is my point. You open a jar of spaghetti sauce, and you dump some angel hair. That's not trying. It may be good enough, but good enough.
What if they were smart enough to buy a bottle of Yellowtail?
So on that note, on the drink note, so my thinking was cocktails, beer, or wine. You want to know, again, you want to know the audience. So if you know your audience is a wine drinker, have a nice bottle. It doesn't have to be a $50 or a $180 bottle of wine. It could be a $14 bottle of wine, but don't have a liter bottle of Yellowtail there.
I was thinking box Franzia.
Yeah, that's sending the same signal as the liter bottle. You want to amp up a boxed wine, decant it, and then you're golden. And then you just toss the box. No, you keep your wine in the decanter. Obviously, you're not going to keep it for very long, but how long is a box of wine lasting? Probably longer for you than for me. But
well, a box of wine's 3 liters. So that's 4 bottles.
Yeah, that is. I don't really want to get into how much wine I consume in a single sitting, but I could take down two bottles of wine in an evening pretty easily.
So I would say wine is going to be your safest choice. Cocktails are going to be your highest success, but you need to know what you're doing.
Well, so on that,
and it requires preparation because you need to have the ingredients.
So, but on that note, you don't want to be getting very drunk because that's
that doesn't track with any of my experiences.
It's kind of taking advantage / territory in that sense. Like, I mean, obviously, I drink too much all the time, so it's not my motive. It's I guess it's in my genetics, but no, you don't want to drink too much. You want to kind of temper your alcohol intake. And if you're making cocktails, one, you have to have the experience of making cocktails, and a rum and coke or a whiskey and coke doesn't fly.
It's not a cocktail.
It's not a cocktail. It's a highball, but not a true cocktail. So you want to have, if you can do a rum and coke if you squeeze in some lime and maybe a dash of bitters, and now you got a real drink.
That's still no. If you want a simple drink that's easy to make and will impress your date, go with the French 75.
What I saw that in a TV show or movie or something recently, and they're like, "What are you, somebody's grandmother?" And he's like, "No, this is an all-time classic. You don't know."
He's right. It is an all-time classic.
But in the same breath, it's like you are somebody's grandmother. Like, just what the fuck is it? But I know what it is. I just understood the
French 75. Classic recipe is gin and lemon juice shaken over rocks, served up, and then topped with champagne. I like adding a little bit of triple sec. It sweetens it up and it smooths it out. But I usually do like an ounce to an ounce and a half of gin, maybe like a half ounce or so of lemon juice, a half ounce of triple sec. Shake that up, strain it into like a martini glass, and then top off the glass with champagne. Chicks love champagne, and this is just a better looking and better tasting version of champagne.
Oh, any champagne cocktail is a total winner. But again, you got to know your audience. A tip that I had thought of when I was thinking this episode out is ask early on when you're dating somebody, first or second date, what their favorite cocktail is, and then when you're in a position where you can host them, prepare that cocktail for them or have that drink for them. That's always a nice one. Now, maybe not so don't ask their favorite meal to eat or their favorite recipe, because then you make it and you have a very high probability of screwing it up or not landing spot on the money for what their thought of that meal is. If somebody tells you they
Yeah.
like meatballs,
It's much better to say like what kind of food do you want, and then just like go from there. But that's why like I don't even ask. I'm just like, all right, we're making Italian. Nobody complains about Italian.
No, yeah, exactly. I wouldn't say what kind of food you want. I would say what are things you don't want, and then it's really on you. But you don't want it should be a bit of a surprise. It's got to have a bit of flair, which is why you can't crack open that jar of pasta sauce. So I want to share what Bruno made on Sunday when we were live and sharing what he was cooking, because there were some pretty simple meals, pretty simple recipes. He whipped them up pretty quick. He made like 5 different total full meals, and just one after. By the end of the afternoon, I had to sit down. I was like, "Dude, my back hurts." I'm no professional chef. Like I sit at a desk most of the day. Like, I can't keep up with you. So, first thing he did was he talked about. I told you this the other night about freezing food? He can't. I had bought like 45 pounds of meat that morning at the grocery store. And because he said, look, just have the basics and I'll make something out of the food that you have. So I was like, fuck, I want to have options, even though he ended up bringing food. But now I have 45 pounds of frozen meat. So to freeze the meat, he wrapped everything up in meal portion separately. And then he spaced them in different places in the freezer, because you want your meat to freeze quickly. The slower meat freezes, the
Bigger the ice crystals are.
the crystals inside the meat from the moisture get larger, and that breaks down the meat. And then when it melts, you have a lot more of the juices from inside the meat leak out of the meat. So you want to freeze your meat as quickly as possible. So he wrapped everything in meal portion size, and he spaced it around the freezer. So that was cool. But then he started preparing this pork rib and sausage, almost like a stew, sort of in a red sauce. So he fried up some pork ribs and some sausage just to brown them. Then he threw in some onions and some carrots, and then he threw in some crushed tomatoes and let that simmer for like an hour and a half while he was doing some other stuff, making some other meals. And then he came back and he made some polenta, which we talked about the other day. Polenta was surprisingly easy. I think it would take some practice to get it right. And then what he did, and this was so if you could practice this 2 or 3 times and then make it for a date, you would kick ass with this. The polenta, he put on a cutting board, small cutting board, and then he made a bowl, a little trough inside the polenta, and he scooped the red sauce with the pork rib and some sausage onto the polenta. And it was just this badass meal. It was really,
See,
really
I think a polenta is grandma food.
well, if you don't have any teeth.
Yeah, if we're talking about like the French 75 being something your grandma likes, she likes it with polenta.
How would you describe polenta? Not the way that no. Actually, let me look up the definition of it because I know what you're going to say because we both shared an opinion about kind of what it reminded us of. Polenta is a dish of boiled cornmeal that was historically made from grains, and it comes from Italy. It's to be served as a hot porridge, but it actually kind of like hardens up and holds its form. So so what we said the other day was it reminded us of grits.
Yeah, I prefer grits.
but no, it kind of hardens up a little bit, and it's still soft, but it holds its form, which is nice. Which is why he laid it out on a wooden cutting board, made a little trough in it with a spoon, and then put the red sauce and some rib meat and the sausage that had been cooking for like 90 minutes, and it was phenomenal, and very very cool, very cool. So that was one meal. The other meal that he made was, you're not a fish fan, but he breaded some haddock and then he fried it up, and he also grilled up some of the haddock, and that was super simple. Just kind of battered it in some flour, threw down some peanut oil, and fried it in the peanut oil, and pulled it out, and that was nice. And then he made a carbonara. You familiar with carbonara?
Vaguely.
So carbonara, he had some nice spaghetti, some nice thick spaghetti, and he shredded up some pecorino romano cheese, and he mashed that up, mixed it up with some egg yolks, and then he boiled the pasta and browned some cured bacon. Basically, he browned that up, and then he threw the pecorino romano with the egg whites in with the bacon. There was a little grease there from the bacon, and then made a bit of a sauce out of that with some of the pasta water, which had a bit of the starch from the pasta, and then just grabbed the pasta with tongs. Didn't drain the pasta water. Grabbed the pasta with tongs, stuck it in there, mixed it up with the pecorino and the egg yolks and the cured bacon, and it created this nice sauce. Little extra moisture from the wet pasta, because that pasta water, was pretty thick with the starches from the pasta. It made a really nice sauce, and a lot of restaurants will add like heavy cream or something into it. This didn't have any heavy cream. Really nice, and that took it took as long as it took the water to boil.
So that's one trick that I found I really like doing this is after you have boiled your pasta, like pan frying the pasta afterwards is really cool.
Well, yeah, you cook the pasta in with the sauce a little bit, and then the pasta absorbs some of the sauce and gets a really nice flavor.
And it also takes some of it firms up the pasta and takes some of the moisture out of the pasta.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
which is also good.
So, but the point that I was making 10 minutes ago with not having a basic meal, both of these meals are super impressive to watch being cooked, and they're super simple. Once you've done it 2 or 3 times, it was super simple to cook. I've made a carbonara.
Yeah, if you haven't done any of these before, you got a first date, you should do a dry run a day or 2 beforehand.
Well, that's my point. So when you're like, oh well, popping the jar of pasta sauce and putting it over some angel hair should be good enough. And that's my point, is that it shouldn't be good enough in the sense that with a practice run or 2, you could master something that looks badass. And then, with the carbonara, he cracked some black pepper over the top, like, it looked like a pasta dish that you pay $28 for in a restaurant, which is, it's a nice looking meal. And what else did he make here? Oh, and then he had a little appetizer. He had a block of ricotta cheese. You get ricotta in a tub, and it's kind of moist. This is a firm block of ricotta cheese with a sliced pear. And that was the appetizer.
So. You know what? Here's something that we haven't talked about, but I think is important. How do you introduce, if you're dating somebody, how do you introduce the idea of doing the entire date at your place? How do you bring that up? How do you sell it?
So if you're on the date and you suggest going back to your place,
that's different.
It's
I'm
implied.
talking.
No, I know. It's implied you're trying to get laid. Now, what you were saying is suggest that the date takes place in your place. Um, that's a good one. And because again, we're trying to take this one step up from hey, want to Netflix and chill, which if it's dinner time, it's going to be Netflix, order some Seamless or Grubhub or DoorDash, and then chill. And that's again when you're inviting somebody over to your place for the first time, you're showcasing your ability to adult, right? And cooking something is nice. So you want to invite this person over, let them know that you're going a bit out of your way to create an experience for them and do something nice for them, right? Like that's the idea.
Yeah, and I think that there's universal agreement here that like the first date at your place, you should be cooking something. It's just an all-around winner of an idea. The only thing that can go wrong with it is if you fuck up the dish.
um, yeah, I that has happened to me before. Not on first date, but
Or it turns out that they have a food allergy that they weren't aware of.
ooh, that could be
That's a fun one.
that could be bad. Now, one time it wasn't a first date, but I was cooking something and I got so fucking mad. And the thing is, it can take. I just kept trying to do it over and over again, and the hours were just fucking ticking by. I was obviously hangry as fuck because I hadn't eaten, and I ended up throwing the ball of uh, pasta dough that I was working on across the room, and just
Don't make pasta from scratch on a first date. You will have a bad time.
and poured and poured some box spaghetti into a what do you call it? So
Doing pasta from scratch is difficult.
it's not once you've done it a few times, it's really not. Uh, that's something that I've learned making the pasta from scratch. Once again, this is why you need to know that you can do it smoothly.
Well, that's what I'm saying is if you've never done it before. If you've practiced it, sure. But if you just look at the recipe and say, oh, I can follow those steps, it's not going to turn out well.
No, yeah, the first time recipes, unless you are an experienced chef, experienced cook, it's not gonna work well for you.
That's
So,
what I mean by it.
yeah, so know your recipes. Make sure you have a nice drink selection. You don't have to have a cocktail bar where there's 12 cocktail options. It could be
I
one
do.
You do, but you don't. What I'm saying is somebody who's 22 years old
That's
doesn't
why I
have
bought
to.
the house.
And yeah, your house came with a nice bar. I'm about to start construction on my basement bar.
Make it all mirrors.
I just missed a an old pharmacy. So I guess some old school pharmacy closed down, or what, I don't know what happened. But there was this old school double door, like the door that opens in the middle, like the top of the door will open or the bottom of the door can open. I don't know what they call it, like a farmhouse door or something.
Okay.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Dutch door
Or
or
it's the
something.
door that's in two pieces.
Yeah, it's like the Dutch door or something. Not like a cowboy saloon door, although that would be bad.
No, I know what you're talking about. It's here's the door, and like both parts can swing open, or you can have just like the top part.
I think it
swing
might be
open.
called double hung door.
I don't know. It's
but
really handy if you're dating a midget.
but it was from an old pharmacy, and it said in this nice glass RX on it, and I was going to get that and replace the door into the bar area in the basement, but unfortunately, and I kept asking this woman over and over again. I'm like, she didn't even put a price. She just said best offer. So I offered $100, and she said, "Oh, I already have an offer." I was like, "Oh, well, just let me know. Let me know what it is. I'm interested. I can come over this afternoon and pick it up." She can get back to me. So I messaged her again. I was like, "Hey, is it still available? If so, I'm interested." And she said, "Hey, well, I have somebody else who's already interested. Said they're coming." And I just followed up, and then she's like, "No, I'm sorry, I sold it." So,
Chances are you were outbid, and she just didn't know how to tell you that.
but well, in our conversation, I was like, "Just let me know what you need." But she didn't play a very good job at upping the bid. She could have said, "Hey, I got somebody that offered me $250. If you can top it, it's yours." She didn't say that. So, um, who knows? Who knows? Maybe because I have a mustache, she didn't like me.
I think it's because She got one offer and she's like, "Cool, I'll take that," and had already promised it to somebody else, and then she got other offers and didn't know what to do.
That's possible, but she's not a very cutthroat, at the art of auction here. But what else? Am I missing anything for those of you guys who are watching live? James, Rosh, am I missing anything on the first date ideas for the first home date? And again, you want to make sure.
Oh, here's a great one.
So your question was, how do you invite somebody over
Well,
for
let
that
me
date?
before we get to that, let me just throw one other tip. Have a new in its package toothbrush.
Well, that's very presumptuous.
Well, it's you don't need to have it laid out anywhere, but like the chances that like they forget to bring a toothbrush with them are pretty high. And if you have a new in package toothbrush, you'll be like, I got something for you. Like it means that they're going to feel more comfortable going to sleep, or when they wake up the next morning, being able to have a clean mouth.
Good question.
And
So
it costs you $2.
Is that well? Also, if you're showing that you're an adult, you should have multiple toothbrushes kind of in backup, right? You shouldn't exist on kind of the one toothbrush, and then when that one's a dud, you're just like, fuck, what I go 2 days without brushing my teeth or something, and
Right.
then you go to CVS and get another one. You should have some backups, but so
Well,
that's
I've got an electric toothbrush, so it's not like I could just easily have a backup. But I have.
Well, you could just say, here, you can use this. I'll use my finger. That's. So actually, a good question is it assumed it's a sleepover date? I would. So my thinking is I probably wouldn't extend the sleepover. I would just say, hey, you'd like to come over for me to cook, and see what the other person does. Do they?
Yeah, you don't state anything. But it's be prepared for all eventualities.
And a comment here saying also a good idea to have some condoms in stash. Yes, obviously you don't want to transmit coronavirus, and I hear you can get coronavirus through sex. So, but back to your question was
back to how we started things off. Wear a mask.
How do you invite somebody over for a dinner date? And
I don't have a good answer for that. I want to know.
I would just say I'd like to invite you over for dinner. Would you be comfortable with that? And
yeah, it might be as simple as like, hey, instead of going to a restaurant or whatever, what if we were to cook something together and then watch a movie at my place?
But it might be uncomfortable to invite somebody over. I find in most uncomfortable situations, acknowledging the existence of some discomfort helps, which is why I would phrase that as, I'd like to invite you over for dinner. Would you be comfortable with that? But I think it's a good way to address potential discomfort is to address it rather than just try to be cool and outsmart it or something.
I disagree. I say just throw it out there and let them answer.
And
Raj says plastic bag. I'm thinking more like paper bags. Brown paper bags go a long way in the bedroom.
All right, so that's it.
And keep your socks on.
Keep your socks on. Eat polenta in bed. That's
No, that's the worst idea.
So, oh man, what So look, I got all this video. So if you guys are watching SipTalk, you can check out these chef secrets with Chef Bruno on my YouTube channel. I got one out there where he's freezing the meat. He gives you a lot of cool tips, tells a bit about his personal story and how he ended up being a professional chef and ending up in America. And I got some more recipes coming out, so you'll learn how to cook from Chef Bruno. And there's also a ton of great YouTube videos on cooking. But point is, if you're watching this Sip Talk episode, check out on YouTube Chef Secrets with Chef Bruno. There's some more stuff in the works. I was up late last night editing this video for the next version, and that's the pork sausage and ribs in the red sauce on the polenta, which was a badass dish. It looked cool. I took a bunch of pictures, and I'll make sure that gets on YouTube too. James, what do you got going on?
I was hoping to be able to get a bike ride or some golf in this weekend, but the weather's going to be terrible. So probably it's tax season now, so I'm going to be putting on the green visor a lot in the next couple weeks.
You have an accountant's light, that light with the green dome.
No, but you can see in the background, right here where I'm pointing. You
Yeah,
got the accountant's visor.
I see it's a green visor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see the visor. You got to get one of those green shaded lights with the little pull down, the beaded pull down. That would be cool too. And maybe you could buy a bunch of fake coins like Scrooge McDuck. But on that note, I think we gotta cut. So thank you guys for joining. Thank you, Raj, for feeding us the live comments, and we will see you guys next time. Adios.
Laters.
See ya.
All right, that's the end of this episode. Thank you for joining. I will see you guys next time. And as always, I greatly appreciate you being here and you interacting with this podcast. It helps us big time, and we enjoy doing it, and we enjoy your comments and your criticism too. So see you guys next time.
I like PBR. I just got priced out of it.